Welcome to Rustler's Reminiscence, stories of hope, faith, and frontier courage. Let the journey unfold. Dry Creek ran on promises and kerosene. Notes stacked like tombstones on my table, and every sunrise bled my herd a few more ribs. A drifter showed with a rope in one hand and a swayback jenny hard planted at the other. He waved a torn salt chit. With my name from a winter I'd rather forget, and shoved the lead into my palm like he was passing a sickness. "She eats little," he said. Even the donkey looked sideways at that. The halter had rubbed her face bald. Pride told me to lead her straight to the livery, turn her into oats and oil, and by a night's sleep paid the wrong way. My father's ghost got there first. He'd been gentle, with stock-big hands, slow voice, patience sunk deep. Shame pricked me for how thin mine had gotten. I loosened the halter and led her to the trough. She balked. Set those mule feet like pegs and brayed till the boards shivered. Then she pawed 1, 2, 3 jitters that walked the trough on its stones. "All right," I told her. "Show me." I fetched a shovel. The first bite jarred my wrists. The second lifted a palm of damp clay, so out of place it felt indecent. In a country arguing over buckets, wet earth under my trough made the hair rise on my arms. I kept scraping, Jenny leaning in like a foreman. Kerosene from last night's? Lamp haunted the wind. Sweat carried the smell, so I tasted blown-out wick. The shovel made a sound that wasn't dirt, a thin, bright clink. I stopped, because every cheap choice I'd been circling lined up in that pause. Sell the animal, sell a calf, sell the place. Mercy had been a luxury that morning. Now it felt cheaper than pride. I cleared the clay and brought up a dark, heavy stone veined like lightning. I set it on the rail. The donkey nosed it, snorted, then nosed a trough as if asking me to lift the lip. I wedged a board, fetched a hammer, and struck. The jolt sang up my teeth. A shard split off, dull blue with a greasy shine. Without thinking, because hands. Remember what fathers teach. I tapped the piece to my tongue. Metal bitterness bloomed along my gums. Not iron. Colder. Down the empty road, heat made the world wobble. I tethered Jenny in the barn's shade and mended a slat because my hands needed work while my mind ran circles. I told myself I was only fixing what was cracked. Truth was, I was waiting to see whether hope would hush or start counting. Lamp. Turned low that night, I did the arithmetic. Feed. The farrier if she ever carried more than her bones. Powder if the hole had to widen. The stove ticked as it cooled. Outside hooves shifted, and once, just once, a long sigh rose like a tired person letting go. I lay awake with metal on my tongue and debt on my chest. At first light I named her Jenny, after the obvious, and after the stubborn women in my family who outlived men and lean seasons. I had nothing a banker would touch, and more month than beef, but I had a decision I could live with. I kept the donkey, and I kept digging where she said no water wanted to be drunk. If that makes me a fool, then at least the choice was mine. By noon a line of blue-black stones sat on my trough rail. I cracked a quail-egg nodule and touched the shard to my tongue. Bitter, cold, not iron. The taste crawled my gums and wouldn't quit. Jenny watched. When I hesitated, she pawed once and fixed on the trough lip, as if the truth lived there. I rinsed the shard. The water held light oddly. I spat dust. The flavor stayed. Word ran. Before the heat slid, 3 men were easy on my fence like it had grown for their elbows. Hats different. Eyes the same. The tall one tipped his brim. "Here you might need help testing rock," he said, softening the last word. "Help steer," I said. "My fence is cheap. Lean harder and you own it." They laughed without teeth. One asked for a drink. Jenny brayed and refused a bucket. Their gazes went past me to the trough. I shut the gate and dropped the pin. After my hands shook. Fear has a weight. That day it lived in my wrists. I chose the densest pieces, wrapped them in oilskin, and slid the rest under a loose barn board where only accident finds things. A fresh twist of wire along the fence wouldn't stop a man, but it would argue with his conscience. I saddled the Jenny. I didn't trust leaving her where other folks' ideas could find her. We clopped toward town under the telegraph. The wire clicked. May Caldwell's assayer window was latched. The slot beneath takes samples with their fee. I wrote my name, slid the fragments through with $2 I couldn't spare, and heard a tin bell clink. No voice, just glass on glass and a sharp vinegar smell. I didn't wait. Waiting in town breeds questions. Questions breed company. I bought lamp, wick, and salt to look honest and headed home with my hat low. The sun went sideways, cutting long post-head shadows like tally marks. Half a mile off I reined in. 3. Shape still leaned at my fence. I felt small, then angry for feeling small. We came up slow. They didn't move, which meant they decided not to fear me. The tall one spread his hands. Assays can be optimistic, he said. May's scale. Runs true, I said. I opened the gate, led Jenny through, and pinned it behind us so the fence stood between us courtesy without invitation. I'll have an answer soon enough, I told them. You'll know when the telegraph does. Their eyes lifted, too. The humming wire. Wind brought thin town smells. Evening laid a cool hand on my neck. They left at last, long shadows sliding off their horses. I fed Jenny a soft apple. She worked it to the good parts. Inside I set the oilskin on my table and laid my father's Bible atop it as if weight could guard value. I promised I wouldn't sell the Jenny or the rock before sunrise. Promises are a poor man's vault. The lamp went to a small, steady. And the telegraph murmured like far rain we were owed and might yet collect. May unlatched the side door before heat pooled. Vinegar, lamp brass, scales level as a judge. She slid my oilskin onto felt, eyes narrow behind wire rims. Let's see what the wind thinks you found. She tapped crumbs into a dish, ground. Them glass fine, then boiled a sliver while the lamp hissed. I stood with Jenny's rope loose around my wrist, listening to the telegraph tick through the wall. When she lifted the dish, the residue shone dull as storm water. Her voice dropped. High-grade galena, silver. If it runs true, you've got a ladder out of debt. The room cooled. A ladder beats a rope in a hard season. How sure? Sure enough to bring a smile to men who don't deserve one. File a claim. Quiet. Bootsteps answered before I could. Deputy Lyman Gray filled the doorway, tall and certain. His badge caught lamplight. He tipped his hat at May, eyed Jenny, then me. Morning, he said. Heard talk you've got questionable water. Under the emergency water ordinance, I'm obliged to inspect sources that might affect town flow. Questionable, I said. In a drought? Town has first say over subterranean reserves, he said, sliding a folded paper from his pocket. Some folks dig careless and starve. A spring. Ordinance gives me reach. Around here, new rules land where the money does. Jenny stilled. Even her ears held their breath. May's look said, Careful. You may step onto my land after sunup tomorrow, I said, because saying no to a badge draws a different breed of trouble. Neighbors present. And a trough is not a reservoir. Lyman smiled like a man listening. To a child count. Noon, he said. I'll bring a measuring rod and a man to read. He set the paper on May's desk as if law had weight. At the threshold he sniffed near the dish. Smells like hope. Makes folks careless. When he was gone, I let breath out. May slid the paper to me with tongs. He's been sniffing around claims since the thaw, she said. Rumor says he files them through a cousin, then enforces his own revisions. You got proof? I've got scales that don't lie and a memory that does. File fast, then string wire. I left a fresh sample for full assay and walked Jenny into the glare. At the recorder's window, I wrote my name careful as a prayer, paid in coins meant for salt, and watched the clerk blot the claim. My hands shook after not fear, exactly, but the size of the thing I'd named. Home again, I worked. New wire twanged along the fence. Tin strips to rattle if pried after dark. Stakes around the trough, a lariat of thorns. Jenny watched, swatting flies, and when I was done she pressed her forehead to my shoulder like a tired friend. Evening cooled the yard. I counted what might go wrong, the vein pinching out, the ordinance widening, neighbors turning when water thins. The badge could call me careless, then take. Mercy got me this far. It would have to carry me through a crowd. I set my father's Bible on the table, not for prayer, but for weight. Tomorrow at noon, the deputy would come look where he shouldn't, and I meant to have more than hope between us. Noon finds a man whether he's ready or not. At first light I walked the fence, tin tags chattering, then sent a wire. May bring maps. Quiet. I trust boredom more than loyalty. Dust lifted off riders and smeared the horizon. They traced. Slow loops. Hank from the south quarter rode up with a spyglass and weak coffee. Folks is curious, he said the pasture word for hungry. I set a keg by the gate for any who asked proper. Jenny watched the road. A stranger tossed a silver dollar at her hooves and laughed when she refused the bucket. Water tastes wrong, he called. Wrong is a word knives wear. It can cut you. Legal. By late morning there were more hats than chores. I put on my good shirt and my father's hat and taught my breath to move. Fear chalked my tongue. Anger rang like a hammer. They came at noon. Deputy Lyman Gray led 2 men and a folded ordinance. Inspection, he said. Emergency Act. Subterranean flows belong to the public. You'll cooperate. I'll host, I said for the riders. Neighbors or witnesses. My claim is filed and posted. Sweat softened the receipt in my pocket. Posted where I can revise it for safety, he said. His men spread out, boots whispering over my hard yard. One touched a tin tag and flinched. At the rattle, "You thirsty?" I asked. "Town water," he said. To the riders, "I'm seeing to your welfare." May arrived with a survey tube. "Read the part that grants seizure," she said. "Inspection only," he answered. "Lift the trough," he told his men. "We'll see what feeds it." "Slow," I said, palm on the hot rim. "Any damage your office pays in beef and lumber." He nodded once. We pried in age. Water darkened the dirt. Wet clay smelled indecent in a dry county. Jenny nosed the damp, then turned away. Lyman's eyes followed hers despite himself. May unrolled county sheets on my kitchen table, dragged into the yard. "Widow's Hill Aquifer margin lies here," she said, tapping lines. "Your authority ends at the margin. If this sits on his side, you inspect, you don't take." "I'll take what I need for evidence," Lyman said. He gestured. His men set hands to the wood. Tin rattled. The riders leaned closer. Cool settled through me, fear finding its shape. "Neighbors," I said, "you see this done right." Hank edged near with the spyglass. We levered the trough higher. Beneath lay bruised clay and the dark seam I'd teased daylight into. Lemon crouched, measuring rod probing. "There," he said. "Samples. Samples go to the assayer with receipt," I answered. May holds them. She offered paper sacks and a pencil. Fine, Lyman said. Too easy. He turned to the crowd. Your neighbor is cautious. I invited witnesses, I said. Dry laughter rippled. His men fetched pry bars. Lyman stepped close. You're in over your head, he whispered. Let me manage this before the spring runs sour and the town comes for you thirsty. I held my ground. Do what your paper allows. Not a board more. Jenny pressed her shoulder to my hip. It steadied me. Heat blinked off iron and glass. The wire hummed. Noon had me in its sights. I was ready enough, or near as a poor man gets before the noose tightens. May and I claimed the kitchen table dragged into the yard. The lamp still stank of wick. She lit it low to weight the survey flat. Jenny stood in the doorway, ears set to the hush after the crowd drifted off. May tapped the county sheet. Here's your trough. Here's the shallow seam. Here, a pencil line, the ground falls to Widow's Hill. Under that crest sits the spring house that feeds the orphan home. Work this vein hard and close, you'll ease the aquifer, like tipping a bucket on its side. The first good thing to find me in a year ran downslope toward small mouths. How sure? Sure as gravity, she said. You can mine with a conscience, or sprint a mile with your mouth full. Either way you spill. Pride rose eager to argue I'd earned a break. It met my father's voice, slow as winter chores. I set my hand on the map to stop it shaking. What would you do? Stake. Tight. Keep Lyman off long enough to set turns that outlive him. Take a smaller cut. Earmark the rest for water co-op pipes, a cistern, repairs to the spring house. If the flow drops, you throttle the work. Tom will say I'm buying my name. Names cost. Better coin than children walking farther. With buckets. Shame tightened my throat. I set my hat beside the lamp. Write it, I said. Terms I can sign in front of God and whoever's counting. We blunted the pencil, standing assay the first Monday each month. If May marked the spring falling, hoist stops. A majority share to the co-op, the rest for wages and oats. I laid my father's Bible on the wood as surety not for holiness, but because Dry Creek knows I don't lie when that book weighs the table. Jenny nosed my shoulder. I rubbed the bald halter marks. You did this, I told her. Now for the deputy. May said, I can't outdraw him, I said. Maybe I can outwalk him into a snare. You mean to bait him. I mean to be patient in public and busy in private. The notion came the way water finds a crack. Lay a shallow shine off the true seam enough to tickle a greedy. I and any man reaching for it will blacken his hands. Graphite, she said. Dangerous, but a crowd loves proof. Wire Judge Cobb, she added. Ask if his circuit will review that ordinance. A maybe from him beats a yes from Lyman. At the telegraph I slid a coin and tapped. Request guidance on emergency. Water ordinance stop. Local overreach alleged. Stop Widow's Hill Spring. At risk stop. Home again. I staked a decoy line 2 yards off the true vein and tapped poor rock where it showed. Graphite gritted my nails. Jenny watched and refused the bucket, as if she'd chosen sides. Near dark I walked to the spring house. The stone sweated cool. The flow's voice was small and steady. I cupped the water. It tasted like nickel and shade in Sundays. I pictured it running to nothing under picks I'd bought, and I chose the other road dot at sunup I'd post my terms on the gate and read them aloud if asked. If the town wanted blood, they'd have to call it charity first. Jenny tucked her legs, and for the first time since she came slept like we'd chosen right. By dawn I had graphite under my nails and a prayer I didn't recognize. 2 yards off the real seam I laid a shallow pocket, rubbed graphite over its faces till they shone greasy, then set boards so any reach would smear wrists and cuffs. I posted my terms on the Gatewater Co-op, monthly assay, throttle if the spring dropped. Folks read. Hank asked, "You sure you want that promise, riding the wind?" "I want it spoken back to me if I forget," I said. Jenny brayed once, then settled, one ear forward, one back. Noon rolled in. Lyman arrived with 4 men, ordinance in one fist, measuring rod in the other. He read my posting like a joke. "Commendable charity," he told the crowd. But under the Act, mismanaged subterranean flow obliges public correction. "Inspection's your lane," I said. "Not seizure." "Cut the wire. Lift the trough," he ordered. Tin rattled. I let them. A plan needs room. May stood ready with paper sacks and a ledger. "Samples logged here," she said. Lyman crouched where he shouldn't have known to. His rod tapped not at the true seam, but at the decoy line. He dug. Like a man following a memory, the first pry lifted dull rock. His foreman reached bare-handed, greedy for shine that wasn't there. Graphite bloomed to the wrist. Another man grabbed to help and blackened himself the same. A sound went through. The riders. "Careful," I said. "Some stones bite." "You salted," Lyman murmured. "You'll hang your own claim on fraud." I tamped my ground neat, I said. "You walked to a spot I haven't named. How'd you pick it out of this honest yard?" Hank raised those smudged hands high. "Deputy, care to explain how your boys went straight to sweetness?" "Paper don't point," May said when he spoke of ordinances. "Maps do, and men who've seen maps early." She sketched the prints quick. "These marks show handling outside the chain I'm logging." Heat needled my eyes. "Neighbors," I said, "you saw me invite inspection. You saw where they went first." The telegraph hummed. A station boy ran up with a strip. "Lyman, read it. Circuit judge will review the ordinance," he said, "pending inquiry." Breath moved the crowd. Room opened. He gestured. His men hands black as stovepipes set the trough back. "We're not done," he told me low. "You can't guard a hole while you sleep." "I won't be sleeping alone," I answered. "This ground is witnessed." He left with his men. Black fingers on clean reins. I shook then. Jenny pressed her shoulder to me and blew warm hay breath down my sleeve. "We got our turn," May said, closing the ledger. "Don't spend it bragging. I'll spend it fencing," I said, "and bread for whoever sits watch." Before dark we set shifts. Hank first, May with her ledger and a shotgun she barely knew. Mrs. Bourdet from the orphan house with a lantern, and 2 older boys who studied Jenny like she was the saint of stubborn. I walked the fence, tin muttering, telegraph ticking, the air smelling of lamp smoke, graphite, and a smaller fear I could carry. I laid down with boots on and the Bible under my palm, and for a few hours the yard held. Dawn smelled of wet clay and lamp wick. I walked the fence. Nails were cool against my palm. Jenny nosed my sleeve like I owed her news. Cinching her blanket, my fingers found a hard line in the seam wrong on a rig nobody had loved in years. The thread powdered under my nail. I worried it open. An oilskin slid out, back pocket size. Heavy Dot May came early with dust on her hem and a ledger under her arm. "Town split," she said. I found a voice. We opened the oilskin on the table, my father's Bible holding a corner down. Inside lay a notebook, neat bearings, dates, claim numbers, and a name Eli Gray. Lyman's brother, May breathed. The one who never came back, pages told on pages. Bearings that matched the seam under my trough. Notations, revised. Per Emerg, Act, another, filed through cousin transfer, after. On the last leaf a torn stub scabbed the spine. By noon the yard filled again. Ranch coats, church hats, Mrs. Bordet, with 2 orphans straight as posts. Lyman arrived last, smile neat, ordinance tucked like a knife. "We'll repeat the inspection," he told the riders. His men tugged sleeves still faintly blackened. "Before you do," I said, loud enough to carry, "hear a man who kept notes better than laws kept him. Eli Gray. Bearings to this seam. Claims altered under the ordinance the deputy reads to us." Lyman's eyes went to iron. "You plant lies in a dead man's name," he said. May stepped up. "These bearings align within a whisper," she told. The crowd laying Eli's numbers against the recorder's book she'd borrowed. "Here's Eli's file. Here it's revised to the deputy's cousin. Here it vanishes into a drawer." She tapped the black on his men's cuffs. "And here is how memory found what paper shouldn't." Noise moved the yard low hot. Hank lifted his chin toward Lyman's holster, and hands went still. "No guns. Not here." I cut the last of the blanket seam and brought out a folded slip that had hidden deeper, a receipt to the Orphan Spring Fund, signed Eli Gray, never cashed. The boys stared like it might lighten a bucket. "Read," Mrs. Burdett said. I did. Compass calls, the water margin under Widow's Hill, a worry that mining would thin it, a plan to file honest and fight. Then the colder hand that transferred claims. Paper shook between my fingers. Lyman stepped in, palm out. "Evidence," he said. "No badge holds it," I answered, passing the notebook to May and then outward to Hank, to the schoolmaster, to the men who'd blackened their wrists at my trough. "The town holds it. Copy it. Post it." "You're making a spectacle," he told me. "Courts don't like spectacle." "Courts love records," May said, hugging Eli's book. "And this is one." Silence pooled. The crowd edged from Lyman without thinking, like water sliding to low ground. "Inspection's over," Hank said. "We'll send for the judge. Till then, no one touches a board." Lemon's eyes flicked to the trough, to Jenny, to the Bible, to the oilskin, closing in other hands. "You think a crowd makes you safe," he said, very quiet. "It makes you visible." "Good," I said. "Let them see." Lyman came early, daylight riding for him. The yard held that hush before heat. Riders lined my fence. Jenny stood by the trough like a stub-tailed sentinel. I set the kitchen table in the yard, my father's Bible-keeping papers honest. Lyman lifted his ordinance. "This rancher salted ground and spun a tale," he told the neighbors. "He hides theft behind orphans and dust. I tasted lamp smoke and fear." "You saw hands black where your rod pointed first," I said. "You heard bearings that match claims revised into your cousin's name. We'll hear the judge." The telegraph ticked. A station boy slipped through the gate. "May read the strip." Circuit review granted. "Emergency water ordinance void pending inquiry. Hold all enforcement. Judge Cobb." The crowd exhaled. Lyman didn't. "A pause," he said, "not a verdict." I looked at Jenny's scarred, plain, stubborn mercy. In a halter. "I've got something to set right," I said, heat rising. "Last night I held a torn page from Eli's ledger bearings to a blind pocket. I thought about selling it to a railroad man for hush money. Thought I could keep quiet, take my share, let the town's thirst go around me. Even the flies seemed to listen. I didn't," I said, "but wanting counts. I owe you the wrong turn I almost took." I laid the torn page beside the Bible. "Post it with the rest," I told May. "No private pockets." Lyman smiled thin. "Hear that? A thief in the making." "I hear a neighbor talking straight," Hank said. The riders leaned most of them my way. I read my posting so there'd be no mistaking. Majority share deeded to a public water co-op. Monthly assays open to any citizen. Throttle work if Widow's Hill thins. Wages before owners take. Disputes to a judge, not a gun. I signed it again. May signed as assayer. Hank, Mrs. Bordet, the schoolmaster. 2 of Lyman's men wrote careful. The station boy printed his name like a flag. This won't save you if the spring drops, Lyman said. It'll hang me if it does, I said. That's why it's on the gate. I tied the paper to the post with baling twine. Then I burned a plank above the trough the way my father marked calves. Jenny's mercy. Smoke bit. The letters darkened and held. Jenny nosed my shoulder and finally drank from the bucket she'd refused. Maybe the water forgave me. Maybe she did. The yard relaxed. Some folks shook my hand. Some only nodded. Enough did the first. Lyman holstered his pride and paper. We'll meet in court, he said. We'll meet under Widow's Hill if the flow falls, I answered. You bring your rod. I'll bring the town. He rode out trailing dust. May folded Eli's ledger for the recorder. You bought yourself. Hard years, she said. I bought right ones, I said. The Bible became just weight. The telegraph softened to a tired clatter. Down slope water kept its small, stubborn talk. That night I slept without my boots. In the dark I heard bucket, handles and children whispering like a creek, and I dreamed of a Jenny standing watch over a trough that didn't lie. Thanks for riding with us through another tale from the Old West. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. More adventures are waiting on the trail ahead. See you next time.